Hello, everyone. Great to have you back, or joining the Up Night Vol.02. We already did one, which was about 4 weeks ago, which was a huge success, at least from our perspective. So thank you very much for joining. It's super casual. That's why we're drinking beer in between. I hope some of you have a couple of drinks as well. If you have drinks, please comment in the chat as well what drink you enjoy right now. I mean, that's basically it from myself. My name is Jens. I have been somehow organizing this together with Jean, and we came up with the idea a couple of months ago, almost now, where we said, hey, let's just do something where we bring a couple of entrepreneurs together and learn from each other. And what's the best thing to learn from each other? Not just the success stories, learning from the fuck ups. Because I can tell it from my side, I learned most when I did a fuck up or when I did something wrong over my career. Yeah, let's hand over to Jean.
Thank you, Jens, and welcome all. This is Jean, and I am a digital transformation enthusiast. I will talk a little bit about myself and then give you the agenda for today and then hand it over to speakers. So I am establishing my own company, 360 Digital Transformation, where I help small and medium businesses to digitalize their business-specific processes. On the exact same topic, I host the Digital Mittelstand podcast on YouTube. Mittelstand is a German word for small and medium businesses. So my aim is to help them to overcome their digital transformation challenges. Besides that, I am a triathlete and I raced in World Championships for age groups in 2019. Right now, I am enjoying my free time from sports during the pandemic time, but I still quite active in the sports, but not as much as before. And right now I will go through the agenda quickly. First, we will have our first speaker, Seth, and then Werner will take the stage. And then we will ask one of you guys to share your own fuck-up stories. In the last event, we had a couple of very interesting stories from the participants. And then, of course, as we have two experienced entrepreneurs with us, we will go over a Q&A session and wrap up for tonight. And before I hand it over to Seth, this is a very informal and casual event. So we have no idea what Seth and Werner will share with us. So I am so excited as you, and just handing over to Seth. Seth, the stage is yours, mate.
Thank you. If you allow me to share my screen, then I'll have a few slides to back up my story. And let me quickly share my screen and then start talking.
Should be coming now.
Yeah. Here we go. I hope this works.
Coming.
Yeah.
Almost there.
Almost there. Yeah. That's what we have, right?
It's a new format of presentations. White on white background.
Yeah. Do you see it now?
Yes.
You have to have 3D glasses to see it.
Okay, because now the only thing I need to make sure is that you also hear my sound. Yes, it is on. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Right. So yeah, my name is Seth van der Meer. I have been an entrepreneur for 21 years already. I started a bit late when I was 30, so you can sort of calculate my age. And the funny thing is that one of the first companies that I founded in 2004 is still the company that I currently work for, even though I have been away for a couple of years. And over the last 20 years, I've had a lot of companies, mainly around digital retail, but also in gaming, in game testing, but also in mental health. So I think I did over 10 startups, and I think roughly 5 to 10 scale ups, and I mentored a couple of entrepreneurs as well. I founded an incubator in the Netherlands called Dutch Game Garden, which is a game development incubator. And because of that, I thought I would also be a good person to make games, and that's what this whole fuck up story is about. So let me start. In 2013, we with a couple of people, an investor, me and a colleague, a psychologist, we all thought that the internet had and the App Store had created possibilities for creating games for not just teenagers, but also for younger children. So we came up with an idea. And before I dive a bit deeper into that, I want to show you a 30-second clip of what it looked like before I go into my fuck up story. I hope this works with the sound now. Right. So we thought games for little children should be made more aesthetically, more beautiful, and also, we thought that it would be a good idea to change the way that children read books by making sort of an ebook, but then very interactive on the iPad. A lot of the apps by that time were pretty bad on the App Store. I had 2 young children myself, so I was like, that could be done better. And like I said, I've been in that game space for about 5-6 years by then. Founded that incubator, did a couple of development conferences, and mentored a few game companies. So I thought, well, let's start a game company myself with one of my colleagues, one of my other entrepreneurs. And we gathered like a couple of interesting people. So we had a best-selling author in the Netherlands. She was ranking in the top 10 for several books over the last 30 years. We had an investor who came from the child, the kindergarten, how you call it, the child daycare, who sold his business and then had a lot of money, and he invested in us. We had a renowned child psychologist, and so we made up a great concept for a game, and we thought that would be like the killer app for toddlers, so somewhere between 2 and 5. And we hired one of the best companies at that time for creating the content like this. So there we had it, 3 seasoned entrepreneurs, a child psychologist, a best-selling author, a great game creator, and so what could go wrong, right? And it went very well in the beginning. We had a lot of attention. We won a couple of prizes, and we also were mentioned in the press a lot. So we were like, "Now that's really going well. We're really having the best traction we could." And what could go wrong? We were even in such a high that we thought, well, not just a game, but we can make like all kinds of merchandise. So we were thinking about making, decals for on the wall in sleeping rooms. We thought about bed lights, making the little knot a main character as a light in your bedroom, and even at some point we were convinced that we might even lead to sort of a new cuddly character that children could play with, all as sort of a merchandise around the game. And we thought we really were hitting gold with this thing. But we fucked it all up. And the question is, why did this go wrong, right? What did we do wrong? We had everything that you would like to have in terms of the right people, the right press attention, the right prizes that we won. Everyone was really enthusiastic about the contents, and then it didn't fly. So if you then look back on what went wrong, basically we had around 10 people working on the game, of which 3 of them were really paid people. The rest were volunteering their time. We spent roughly 200,000 euros in production, in marketing, maybe production and marketing. And then when we started to look at the income, what income? So after about 9 months, we totaled 3,000 euros on game sales. So we had this great game that won prizes, that was mentioned in the press everywhere, and we couldn't get farther than 3,000 euros in paid downloads. So that's really that's why we thought, how could we have done this wrong? What was the failure behind it? Because we were sort of too stubborn to recognize that we were not doing it right. We thought we were doing everything right, and it took us too long time to recognize that we were not doing the right things. So I tried to sum up a few of the lessons there, the things that we did wrong, I think, in the end. First of all, we did not understand anything about marketing and pricing in what you could call the app space or the game space. We had no experience at all of marketing or consumer marketing for apps. That turned out to be a lot more difficult than we thought. We thought, well, if we have the right press coverage and we go to the right events, then people will know us, and they will download it because they definitely need this app. They need this because there's so much other apps that are crap. So we are fantastic, and they will do it. But we failed to really go out and market. We failed to really have the right marketing channels to reach the audience that we wanted to reach. And maybe we were looking in the wrong places. And we were too convinced that all that free PR that we had would lead to downloads, but it didn't. In the end, every press coverage, every article that was published or that went online, we saw maybe 5 or 10 downloads, and we were expecting hundreds, so maybe even thousands from some of them in local, in national newspapers, for instance, in the Netherlands, and even in a few other countries. And we didn't really understand anything about the price dynamics of the app. We thought that we charged $4.99 at the start for the app, and we thought that people would like to pay for that because they got a quality app comparable to a book. So we thought $4.99 was a great price. We lowered it. We went to $2.99, but nothing happened. We tried for 99 cents. Still nothing happened. We tried free for a couple of weeks, and few downloads, but then getting back up to $2.99 or $4.99 was difficult. And of course, you need to do that for every country in the App Store. So it's a lot of work, and we didn't get that right. Then, if you look at the team that we had, the problem there was that we owned the IP, so we had everything around the game, around the character, around the designs. Everything was ours, except for the creatives that were really programming and that were designing. We hired them, and that was a great mistake because it meant that we need to keep investing in them to let them sort of create new stuff. And we tried a free game, so we actually made a second game that was free, and then tried to use that as sort of getting people then to get more known to our content and hopefully sell the next game. But we were just spending cash and nothing came in, and we had nothing. We couldn't invest our own hours. We really had to invest in the people we hired. And I think, and this is a big lesson, we thought too high of ourselves. Having been in that world for by then, I think 8 years, we thought we knew everything about the game industry, and we didn't. Yeah, some of the things we learned, we invested too much before. So we were spending, I think, 100K on the game development, and we did not have any market validation by that time. So we were already down 100,000 euros before we even could test out the market. That was something that we shouldn't have done, but we did anyway. And we were the developer and the publisher at once. So we were developing that game, but we were also acting as a publisher, and that was sort of the I think what hindered us in making the right decisions. You know, as a publisher, you could easily say, well, we just stop with this and we go to another developer and we go to another game IP or a game idea, and then we invest in that. But we were too much sticking to that original content because we thought that was the best content that was out there. And then I think one of the other learnings was that we had so much attention from press, free attention, that we mistook that for future sales. So we really thought that would lead to sales, and it didn't. So my last slide. What did I learn as an entrepreneur? Like 20 years of trying out and failing and also succeeding. I think one of the things, it made me humble again. So the arrogance that you have when you think you can do a lot and you had a few successes, it doesn't mean that the more success you have, the bigger the chance that you succeed. You can still fail. And you might maybe even feel because you are too arrogant. Another lesson is that the team sizes should really be small. You should have everyone in the team that is able to be productive and have that key assets and the resources in your team. So not hiring in people, but really try to have a team that can do at least a minimum viable product before having to reach out to people to rely on. Well, thinking that the product will sell itself, that's something that you should never do, because when you think you have a great product, you don't do enough at marketing. I think if you start from the idea, I really have to sell this product, then you have a better chance of succeeding. Another thing I learned is that knowing about an industry is not knowing the industry. So I knew a lot about the game industry, but I was not experienced at all in developing and publishing games. And because we were the publisher of the own IP that we created, we were stuck. We should have done one or the other. Either try to develop the game and find a publisher, or just be a publisher of children's games and then find developers that wanted to pitch their games to us. And App Store marketing sucks. It was really difficult to get that going, regardless of our experience. It was very difficult to get the marketing through the App Store. So that was my fuck up story. And the good news is I fucked this up so much that I'm now in consumer medtech. So pity me.
Thank you.
Thanks, Seth. Awesome fuck up story, and I think a lot of valuable learnings for all of us who are into entrepreneurship. We will take questions later. We first go towards Werner, and then we open the mic for everyone. And we have already a couple of comments and thank yous. So it's really great. If you have questions specifically to Seth, please put hashtag Seth and then put your question to Seth. And the same with Werner going forward. But let's move to Werner.
Let's do this. Okay, so my story starts back in South Africa. In fact, on my way to, I was at the paintball range in Johannesburg, South Africa. And at that point, I had to go see one of my most important clients. In fact, he was not only a client, he was a sponsor, he was an advertiser, he's also a dear friend. And I felt I had to go and look him in the eye, and we took a walk, and I turned to him and I said, Mike, dude, I fucked up, but I'm going to have to let you wait a little bit longer to tell you what Mike told me that day. Now, in this presentation, or rather the story, it's not a presentation, Werner, I want to share with you how important it is to actually start building your brand early on when you create your business, and then also doing so with intent. Now, a lot of things that I'm talking about here is by mistake and have changed since then. And also, the other thing I want to mention, there's a lot of definitions around brand, and I don't want to dive into that because a lot of people disagree what brand is. I'm not a professor in marketing. I'm just a humble entrepreneur that understands the value of brand, that sage-like power it has. But in the comments, has anybody ever heard of paintball? Now, my journey with paintball started 20 years ago. It was a decade-long adventure and also the creation or the start of my first real business. And very little of my current friends actually know this side of me, right? The jersey's hanging there at the back. But one of the things, if you ever met me and I handed you a business card, yes, I come from that era, you'll notice something strange on that business card, the word Wiener Dog. And here is an example of one of my recent Deloitte business cards. And if you look carefully past the facts, I don't know why that's there, you'll see that Wiener Dog is there. And Wiener Dog was actually given to me by a pro-American paintball player when I first traveled into the great wide world of professional paintball. And I kind of hung on to it. And the reason I hung on to that Wiener Dog is that part of the story that I'm trying to relay here is kind of a reflection of that, and I carry that along throughout my career. But Wiener Dog, now to tell you the story, I have to take you a little bit back into time. I have to explain to you about Wiener Dog a little bit more. Now today, Wiener Dog, who is actually Werner Puchert, is a creative entrepreneur. I'm an independent consultant, focus on all kinds of interesting things. But then before that, I actually worked for Deloitte Digital. And at Deloitte Digital, we started 2 Deloitte Digitals, one in Johannesburg, South Africa, and then later on, one in Central Europe. And therefore, my living arrangements currently, and that also a wife that I'm currently living in Warsaw, Poland. Before that, though, taking you more back into time, I was actually serving on the board of directors for TBW Tequila. It is a digital marketing agency, like the real deal, madman kind of stuff. We did amazing work for clients like Adidas, Visa, Nissan South Africa, and even McDonald's. Yes, I sold hamburgers too. And then for the relevance of the story, because everything kind of builds up, Wiener Dog also worked for a newspaper. So I worked in the old school kind of newspaper business. I worked for a real deal editor, people who valued the insights of real journalism, something that some people argue we don't have anymore today, but I got trained by those guys. But then also during that time, and that's about 20 years ago, we also started moving into the strange world of digital, and we started doing digital publishing. So a lot of the newspapers we created actually shifted into digital publications. Now, that's also around that time that I started my little business called sapaintball.co.za. So hang on to this. There's SA, which means South Africa, my country of origin, and then paintball, the sport, and then at the end, .co.za, the extension, the domain extension for websites in South Africa. And I ran and managed this business for about 10 years. Now, at the beginning, I asked you, hey, do you know anything about paintball? And this is an important question because there's a lot of aspects to paintball. I mean, people know it as splat attack, war games, and all these kind of things. I know it as hyperball, speedball or airball, or tournament paintball. And in fact, I want to show you a quick example, if I may, of what paintball is really about, or the paintball that I know. There's no audio here, but here you can see people playing, going crazy. Mirror fields, I think the audio is playing in the background. Music to get at the hype. Symmetry, sport, you have to be fit. Painful. We had referees, full-on team sport. And there we have it, the famous gog shot or cyclops. I hate getting those, but dishing them out is the best feeling in the world. So the thing is that I kind of sucked at sport at school. And you might know that South Africa is a heavy rugby playing country and football. If you look at these bad boys, these aren't playing rugby anytime soon. And I started playing paintball, and for some reason I kind of realized that I'm actually kind of good with this sport. I mean, some of my fellow teammates might disagree, but I did build a career out of it. And it is that point that I decided, man, I want to make a living out of paintball. Now I know. Jens is probably going to chip in with Werner. This is about how I fucked up. But the thing is, to set up the fuck up, I need to tell you what I did right. Now, a lot of the things that I did right, I actually only realized in hindsight. You know, they say hindsight is 20/20. So I looked back at some of the things that went right to actually build this business up. So one of the first things I did is to actually focus on my editorial skills. At some stage, someone approached me and said, listen, Werner, do you want to create a business where we have a paintball range, you can have people playing, and then someone offered me like an opportunity to sell equipment with them. I knew nothing about hospitality and retail. But one thing I did know about was publishing. So I started focusing on that. And that brings me to my first point. The one thing I did right with the business, one of the few, is the adjacent possible. I looked at what my skills were and I applied it to something new, paintball. So I started this kind of online portal where I published articles, reviews, news of what was happening in South Africa. Then the second thing I did, which worked brilliantly, is like I mentioned at the beginning, I didn't want to be associated with the war games and the military and guns and all that kind of stuff. Paintball, tournament paintball, was seen as a sport. It was serious. At some stage, they actually wanted to push it to the Olympics. It was part of the X Games at some point, ESPN. Tournament paintball was serious. And I started to niche down, and that's the second thing I did. I niched down to focus only on the South African tournament paintball player. And what worked in my favor is that these were also the guys who had the money, the time to spend to play paintball. And like me, they shared my passion. They were hyper passionate about the sport. So brutally niching down to the audience that I wanted to serve. The next thing I did that started to give me some growth or traction in the market was tension. So how did I do that? No one was coming to the website. So the first thing I did is I created a list of my dream customers, the people that I wanted to deal with. So in the customers, I went paintball teams, advertisers, paintball ranges, and I wanted to open up to all players. So the first thing I did is I approached a few South African paintball teams, like the top teams. I offered them some space on my website because I knew something that they didn't have was actually access to the internet back then, because it was very difficult to do web development. They didn't have the access or know-how. I gave them some space and they started jumping on board. And when they jumped on board, a lot of people said, me too, I want some of that. Also, what played in my favor is that one of the actual teams actually offered to carry my branding on their shirts, which was a huge move for me. And so, like, really creating that tension was important. But South Africa, SA Paintball.co.za was growing. It was kind of getting traction, but not enough. And it was only at some stage when I was sending my little newsletter out to my big database that one of my mates turned to me and said to him, Werner, why don't you sign your name on this in this email? People want to know who you are. You're kind of like hidden behind this thing, and maybe there's a byline, but no one knows who Werner is. Soon to be Wiener Dog. And that's where I bring my last point in about what went right. Is like I signed my name to it. But signing my name was also going out to meet people where they were doing business. I went to kiss babies, shake hands, opening of fields, supporting new teams. I did as much as I could, sharing that passion for the sport. But they knew who I was. They could connect with me. And let's be clear, not everybody liked Werner or Wiener Dog. The other thing I did that was kind of like a remnants from the editorial space is that journalists have rules. There's rules to journalism. So what I did, it wasn't a kind of terms of engagement on my website. It was like a constitution that I created that I also held myself accountable to. So sometimes I would write an article or I would favor someone else above someone else, and then I had to go online and actually apologize because that was against the constitution of SA Paintball.co.za. And I think you've seen this happening. Some do it well, some don't, like Elon Musk stepping into the limelight for his businesses. You have people like Shonda Rhimes who founded a lot of production companies, and she's also a brand in herself. So don't be shy to step into the limelight when you have your business. I mean, it went crazy, man. It went like kind of out of hand. Now, you can see yours truly there on an international paintball magazine. Yes, I made this spread. Okay. My mom still got a lot of copies of those, right? But otherwise in the business, advertising, international advertising, I had deals with international magazines. I wrote for them. They sent me content. I had correspondence also over South Africa. Things went great. I also made some affiliate revenue from gear that I sold on the website for other guys. But as you can see, there's a sample of the website. Looks very 90s, I know. But it's around this time that I started screwing up. Things started going wrong there. The first thing that I would say that what went wrong there is that I started focusing way too much on what was happening inside the business. I was creating features, updating the website. I wasn't focusing on creating systems around my business to actually allow more people in. Yes, correspondence, but at the end of the day, I was updating the website. I was running to all the events. I didn't scale my business properly. And this is where the darkness came. Because at some stage, through a friend of a friend, this guy approached me. We met a few times and he said to me, listen, Werner, I can see you working your ass off. I've got a deal for you. I have an internet service provider locally in South Africa. I'm actually running it. I have servers at home. I'm going to offer you free server space. Move your site over. I'll take care of anything. You don't have to pay for hosting anymore. Because at that time, I was hosting in the States, paying a monthly fee. And I think also back then, you had to pay for the actual amount of data that you were using. And it was getting kind of expensive. And I thought, damn it, man, this sounds great. Let's do this. But strange things started happening during that time. It's the first time ever that the site got hacked. Someone was actually writing dirty shit over the website. Started stressing me out because this is not the brand that I wanted to build. And then I started realizing really what is the value of actually paying for something. Because if you pay for something, you can complain about it. You can demand the service that you needed. And then I went and I played open cards with this guy. I said, listen, dude, and this is not working out for me. I need the security and the backup that this other entity allows. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually busy redesigning the website anyway. I'm going to move the website back to my American host. Hard feelings. And he said, let's do this. Let me know what you need and I'll help you sort this out. So I was sorting out the new site. And then when it came time to flip the switch, his demeanor changed like that in an hour. He sent me email demanding 80,000 Rand. Back then, it was a shitload of money I didn't have. He claimed that I owed him this money because of the hosting. And what I didn't realize back then when I first did the change over to the website is that he actually took ownership of sapaintball.co.za. He fundamentally, at the core, owned the web domain name. Now, I'm a bit more savvy now, but he took ownership of that. I mean, he even tried to sell the domain at some stage as well. I was devastated. I mean, a shitstorm ensued. It was crazy times. I mean, as a youngster going into this world, I tried to get to the domain authority. They told me to bugger off because, what's this guy? I had lawyers, expensive people who charged by hour. They couldn't do anything. And it was just super stressful. And in some way, the guy kept the website going so that I can update it. And I started kind of working for him. But I knew the writing is the wall. I lost sapaintball.co.za. The baby that I created was gone. And I had to go face the fire with my advertisers and the people that I was serving. And this brings me to the paintball range back in Johannesburg where my story started. Walking alongside Mike, and we were about to host this tournament together, and he invested some cash for the sapaintball.co.za 101 challenge. It was an annual event that ran every year. And he was going to make it big that year. I told him the story. And Mike is an ex-boxer. He didn't mince his words. I was also a bit worried about the right hook. But when I looked him in the eye, I never saw Mike actually shine through so much empathy. He looked me in the eyes and he said, Brew, just change the fucking name. And that's what Mike taught me about branding back then. Because what he said to me is that, you know what, Werner, people are there for you. Brother, they came to hang out with you for the shared passion. And it took Mike to point out that out to me as a kind of a learning around brand. And not everybody liked SA Paintball for what it was. And maybe they didn't like me either. But they appreciated what I was doing. And it was only later on when I started working in user experience and customer experience that I realized what that was. I'm going to go through those. So the first thing that you focus on is trying to establish satisfaction. We all want to do that. You want to satisfy the customer. The second thing is loyalty. And I think through SA Paintball, I got that right. It was working. Now, lots of times, if you look at the McKinsey model, they will go, yeah, you need advocacy. Advocacy. People need to say good stuff about you and actually drive back traffic. But there's a better word for it. And that's what I got from the community in South Africa, was goodwill. Because when shit hit the fan, they turned to support me. So what we did is we changed sapaintball.co.za into sapaintball.info. And after that, what happened was that we relaunched the website. The website became part of a whole tournament relaunch. So in the event that we were going to host was actually the relaunch of sapaintball.info. And it ran for another 5 years. Also culminating at the end in me playing the World Cup in Malaysia. We won the World Cup there. And it's around that time that I actually hung up my marker. And also because I knew that my passion for the sport was kind of dwindling a little bit, that is also the time to actually shut down sapaintball.co.za, or in fact .info. But the funny story is that one of the people who actually was one of my advertisers, actually later on, a couple of years later on, got to buy .co.za back, and he gave it back to me as a present. So a quick recap, what I was saying is that, first of all, adjacent possible, focus on what you're good at. Second thing is brutally niche down to that audience that you require. Create tension, make people want your product or your service. Sign your name, add yourself to the game, or at least set the constitution in place. And then don't forget to work on the business. I know working in the business and getting it going is important, but look at the future, because I think sapaintball.co.za could have been so much more if I looked into the future. And then finally, never, ever, ever trust a South African internet service provider. Thank you.
Thanks, Werner. It's a great one.
Thank you. Thank you.
There it is.
So we open up for questions. We have already one question for Seth. Any more questions? And we open as well for those who want to share their fuck up story now. So if you want to share your fuck up story, raise your hand and we take you on the stage. Last time we have at least, what was it? 4, 5?
Yeah, 4 or 5, definitely.
So we just need the first one who is willing to do it, and
then
the
the other
others
ones
will join.
Follow. Yeah.
So we start with the questions. We have one for Seth. Love the point around working and knowing the industry. How do you think we can get a better, deeper understanding of the industries that we work in, and not just being drawn to the things that we think we know?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I was a bit distracted the last 20 minutes reading that question and thinking about an answer, because there's not an easy answer to that, right? It's really about, I think that the lessons that I learned from being humble and listening to people, not thinking that you're the champ, everything. Listen, go to these fuck up stories. There were not that many in like 10 years ago. And I think for some things, it's just experience. I think you sometimes have to fuck up, or at least have a bad experience to get the lessons that you cannot learn in an MBA. That's at least my experience.
Thanks for the answer. Any more questions? We have another one for Werner. Are there any lessons learned from sports and convert into business?
So, I mean, I reflected on that a little bit. I mean, like I mentioned in the conversation, or in the story, that I think the one lesson is kind of twofold. Like, the one thing that worked in my favor with SA Paintball is the fact that we had a shared passion. But the thing is, passion can fizzle out. It's your passion. There wasn't really a purpose. And I think if I had a more clear focus on what the actual purpose of this platform was going forward, I would probably still be involved there. But what happened to me at some stage is I had these kind of goals that I set out for myself in the sport, and I reached them. I got there. And then I had to make a decision. Is it a cycling through to do it again? And then I made a decision at some stage to walk away, because any work that I would have done after that would have been substandard, and I didn't want to do that either. So, yeah, it's kind of twofold. And it's focusing on purpose over passion, and then also having that like long-term view of where you want to take the business ultimately is super important. And that's something I didn't have at that time. I mean, a lot of things also changed since, because when I walked away from SA Paintball, I had all these questions, and kind of retrospectively, just after the website stopped, we also hit a big, economy problems and that kind of stuff. It probably would have kind of killed me anyway, but it's a lot to think about, yeah.
I think it's like cycling. You see an obstacle on the road, but you keep on looking at the apex, otherwise you will fall. Not because of the rock on the road, but because of the angle of the apex. So you see the obstacles, but you keep on the longer perspective, on the horizon. But thank you for the great answer, Werner.
So we have another one for Seth.
Yeah,
were there any things you would do to increase revenue retrospectively?
Yeah, so the easiest answer is, of course, not to spend so much money, but that's already too late. So one of the things that we considered doing, but we were not doing the right way, is doing. We thought we have a global business, so we thought we could launch in all countries at the same time. And I think if I would do it again, something like this, I would focus on one or two regions or even big countries, and get my marketing and my marketing channels, my marketing message, ambassadors or advocates lined up in just a smaller region, making it a success. Maybe in Canada or the US or the UK or Germany, and then from there on, go to the next country or the next region. I think that was one we had too much balls to juggle with, and working with Australia and Japan and trying to get that right. I think that was too difficult, and for that we were not investing enough per country or per region in the end.
Thanks for that. Then we have another question for Werner from Vadim. I saw so many micro businesses that fail because of the niche is simply too small. Where do you stop when you niche down? What are the signs one should look out for?
So I don't have a direct answer or a golden nugget that I can hand over to you. What happened though is, and I see this currently in a lot of work that I do now, is that you have to do kind of stakeholder mapping, the environment. So even when I started SA Paintball, honestly, I was really focused on the players. But when I went into creating this platform, I knew we had players, we had tournament organizers, we had suppliers, we had range owners. I understood the ecosystem, but I honed into the tournament player. And you know what? Tournament players are all broke ass because they're spending their money on buying equipment. They're not spending it on SA Paintball. So what I did is through prototyping, because I didn't just launch the business, but I gave myself enough wiggle room. I understood the landscape, targeted the tournament paintball player, and then kind of reversed out of it, extending the business and then adding solutions and services that still fits under the umbrella of the business, but then extends to, me connecting the tournament player with a range, me connecting to the tournament player with a tournament organizer and with gear. So I brought in those other people because the revenue actually came from the other people around the player. So I understood the landscape.
Maybe I can add something to that, because the business that I'm currently in and still in is also a niche business. We provide interactive manuals for device manufacturers. It's a small niche. I think we only have 2 competitors in that area in the whole world. But one thing, if you have a niche, it only works if your buyers are also a niche. So if you only have like a couple of hundred buyers, it's very simple to check out whether you can keep that niche and if you can sell to them. But if you have to sell like something small, like a real niche, to a large audience with very low transaction costs, right? If it's like a couple of euros or a couple of dollars, I think that's a sign where you could say, well, maybe that's too difficult. Whereas the niche that we have a very specialized product, which sells for hundreds of thousands of euros per customer, but it's only a few customers. So after a few tries, whether you can succeed with your niche or not. And we're still in the business after 17 years.
I think the other thing also that might come into play, but I would like to hear what the rest of the panel has to say, is also like the business model you choose. Because even for the niche that I had, it was quite small. I mean, I didn't ever try to sell them something once off. For me, I tried to always focus on creating some kind of subscription, like recurring revenue, because I knew if I sold something to them that they're going to have forever, I'm never going to get money out of this again. So I had to kind of think about how I can create a service that can have or generate that recurring revenue.
Point.
Yeah, and I think that's important as well from building a business that you build. And we talked about that outside of this room. It's like you build like different offers that work together in combination. So it's like an offer staircase where you graduate your customers into your ecosystem and then basically serve them with different topics and find new ways of serving their needs, dreams, and desires in different ways. Do we have more questions?
I think there is one more question to Werner. Is it like, would you have walked away with a scenario like that hadn't happened?
Yes. So the thing that was super important for me, specifically when I was doing SA Paintball, I mean, look, I mean, the learning for me these days are different. I mean, my current business, I'm looking at my current business completely differently. But back with SA Paintball, I mean, it was a passion thing. And I knew my customers, the people that I served, wanted 100% out of me. I had, like, perhaps the only thing that could have saved it is that if I stepped back and I allowed someone else to take over and then run the business in my stead that had the same passion as me, then it could have survived. But because I didn't focus on actually expanding the business or scaling it in such a way, it was either kind of letting it die out over time or kind of calling it quits when I walked away from the sport.
Yeah. So we have Joshua who is willing to share a story. Welcome.
Hey guys.
Hey Joshua.
Hey Joshua.
Hey there.
Cool. Firstly, thanks for Jens and Ken. Thanks for setting up another entrepreneurship fuck up night, and Werner and Seth, some great takeaways and many key thoughts that I'll take into some of my thinking going forward. So thank you for sharing. And then, yeah, just basically a quick story from my side. And I think it starts back to trying to be too perfect when you start launching something. And I've got a story from when I started way back when working in a startup marketing team. And I wasn't launching a product, so to speak. It was more around launching a campaign. And one of the mentors that I have started out and said to me, do you realize that if you try to be too perfect and try to make everything 100%, you'll miss out on a huge amount? And I think the biggest lesson inside that for me was, if we try and make things too perfect, by the time we launch it into market, we'll never, or rather the product that we thought we were launching into market when you first started with the idea won't actually have that market fit that we thought it would, because we were trying to make something too perfect. So the case in point here is we were actually launching, I was working for an asset manager at the time, and we were launching a marketing campaign rather. And the marketing campaign was around challenging you to be the best human that you can be. And we tied it to this concept of coffee. And we spent 3 or 4 months working with an advertising agency and really trying to hit the nail on the head with the messaging around this coffee and trying to tie asset management to coffee. But the biggest thing was that we didn't actually go, Werner, to your point, and understand the customer, because we came out with this concept of what we thought was super rad and shit hot cool, but actually it sucked. And then you go into the boardroom with the entire board and the executives, and you're now presenting this concept, and it doesn't make sense because you didn't actually take the time. You tried to make it too perfect, and you didn't listen or ask for the feedback in the first place before you started that project.
Point.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, Guy Kawasaki says, good enough is good to go. Never wait for the perfect. Good enough is good. So if you attend to an exam and get 80 points, you are good graded. So 80 over 100 is good. And I always say 80-20 rule also applies to that not perfecting. So that is my 2 cents on the topic. And thank you, Joshua, for this story.
Yeah, I can just highlight that as well, that coming from a large corporate background, it always needs to be 100% perfect. And you're not launching anything, and you wait. Sometimes you develop something over years and you're not launching, and then when you launch, it's a failure because you have waited 2 years.
Yeah,
It's already late.
It's so incredible always to see that, especially when you're innovator or working with an entrepreneurial mindset in a large corporation. Then you always see that and you think like, oh my God, how can that happen? But it's quite fun to see. So more questions.
Yes, I saw a question for me coming in.
Yes.
It's a large question, but it's really about how could we develop a app for children to go to sleep, while at the same time we know that screens are not the best things to look at before going to sleep, right? And how come that none of the psychologists mentioned that? Of course, we knew that, and in essence, children are already on their screens and on their phones. So, and there was a lot of crap content. So what we thought is, okay, if they're on their iPads already, then let's just accept that as a fact, but then still try to do something good. So in the app, a couple of things we did. We did a sort of a blue screen filter in the design, so we tried to emit some of the bad light. The second thing we did is we kept the app to a certain time, so you could play exactly 2 times. It was a sort of a story where you had to put other animals to sleep, and we made them yawn with yawning sounds. And we did an experiment where we tested children when they see, and it's with normal people as well. When you see people yawn, you start to yawn as well. So you start to emit the hormone that gets you to sleep, right? The melatonin that you can also get in tablet form nowadays. That was sort of like the psychology. Well, at least that was the chemical part behind it. So getting the melatonin by having the yawning sound and seeing and helping others to go to sleep. And then after 2 times play, it locked. So you could not play it again for 5 minutes, and that was then the end of it. And of course, we advised people not to do this in bed, but maybe to do it just before you go to bed, so you have another ritual behind it. For instance, brushing your teeth and putting on your pajamas, and make this just part of the bedtime ritual and not so much a thing you do next to the bed right before you go to sleep. But I understand the question, and yes, we did take care of that.
Did it work with the yarning? I tried that with my little daughter. It didn't work at all.
But it
usually does, right? It usually does if you try.
Maybe I'm not good enough in playing it, but we have another guest who wants to share his fuck up story. Andre, you're on mute still, so you need to unmute yourself, and then you're welcome to share your story.
Yeah, thank you, Jens, and thank you, guys, and happy to see you, Seth. We met a couple of times before, and guys, I'm listening. Then it's more you are describing the fuck ups, let's say, towards the products and a little bit the partnership between the different entities, or I don't know, other issues, but I would like to share a bit the story about the fuck up is inside the team. How important to build up the proper entire team, because it's I had an experience to build up the different teams inside the big organization. When you are from the very beginning leaded by the dream, I would say you have a corporate money, and then you have a dream, then you have an idea, perfect stakeholders, then you're preparing the fancy presentation, passing by the boards. And then in some stage that until you launch the product and you are facing some, I don't know, other demands or request or recommendation by the board's member, you ended up with a situation when inside the team, you have challenges when everyone is trying to pull the product towards a different direction. And one of the learnings out of this story is how to build up the proper culture inside the team, that you're not contradicting inside the team, you are adding value to the product development instead of trying to fight between each other. And this is all, honestly speaking, the different tasks. And then I can compare a little bit the issues and activities in the corporate life when you know that everyone arrange but one vision, one goal, one let's say direction, and another things when you are doing some internal let's say your own private initiative, when you are just with a couple of friends trying to invest some money and trying to develop something, and then you have a different experience. You are from the different organization, or I don't know, have different backgrounds, and then and the final end of the day, as it was written in one book, you are staying under the rain during the night and shouting at each other and trying to find the proper way how to develop the product further, or how to bring something to the market. And my questions, honestly speaking, after this a little bit the fuck ups about the teams inside, to both of you, honestly speaking, do you have some similarities, or do you have some similarities inside your teams during the development or implementation, and how you handle these issues when you have a different opinions, or someone believe that someone inside the team is more important than anyone else? Thanks.
Thanks, Andre.
Thank you, Andre.
So, who starts?
Yeah, that's it's a good question. It's something that happens, of course, a lot. I mean, in smaller and in bigger teams, keeping focus and keeping aligned on what's important, what should go first, and then within that, you have people that think that they are more important than others, or that their decisions are better. I think that is it's of course very human, right? We all have this sort of we have our egos, and we have our own urgency for things that we think are important. Keeping that aligned is of course not something you can manage in a contract, or you can manage in arrangements you make up front. It's really about knowing the people you work with and know how they operate in different circumstances, and you know what you can expect from them if they're under pressure, or if they're having other issues. And I think that's one of the things that I learned, and when I many of the companies that I founded or that I have been working in, I always had this idea that I would only like to work with people that I would also like to hang out with. That was always a golden rule. They should be sort of friends to be able to overcome the issues that you will face where you have different opinions. So I would try, it's not really a solution, but if possible, try to work with people you know more than just as a colleague. So that would be my advice.
Werner.
On my side, later on in my career, I worked with a lot of teams, and we had managed teams, and I kind of identify with that problem. But I have two thoughts about it. The first thing is that, like in my story, I mentioned that you have to be intentional about developing your brand and that. But I also think that sometimes we forget that we need to be intentional about kind of aligning on objectives and the purpose and the ideas that we have for building this product. And that means actually taking time and sitting down and actually aligning around those and having conversations, specifically where you give everybody else a chance to express how they feel about things, and then mapping that out to see if there's actual alignment. Because sometimes we assume that it's happening, and there's a double ASS in assume, because that never works. The other thing that I've also realized over time, and it's actually something that I've realized with Paintball.co.za when things started going wrong, is that actually a lot of the alignment problem was me. I saw things in a certain way, so I was a bit of an asshole because I wanted to keep control of the situation, but then also I never shared the vision and my ideas for where I wanted to take the platform with the teams and people that I worked with. I mean, I had a couple of people around me. I never let them into my space. So the one thing I would say, though, and I agree with everything what Seth is saying, The only thing I would say is like sometimes when there's a problem, just start with yourself first, because that's the person you can really change. So that's kind of my thing.
Great.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing, guys.
Thanks, Andre. I will move you back. Anyone up for going on stage and telling a story or having more questions? There's someone. Wait, I need to find. Jeff wants to join. Let me get him on stage.
Yeah, Jeff.
Coming.
You're welcome, Jeff.
Hello,
Welcome
Jeff.
to the panel. You need to unmute yourself.
Unmute. There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Well, thanks guys for sharing all your stories. It aligns with so many different things. I mean, if it wasn't for my narcissism, I'd have a whole bunch of fuck up stories to share. No, I'm just kidding. I started my career in design 20 years ago, and so I've done nothing but fail. But I think the one thing that has really stuck with me over time is early on, I met all the thought leaders in user experience and information architecture 2 decades ago, and through podcasting actually, and it was a great experience. It was a wonderful treat. But then I started my own consulting company, and it never dawned on me to really take into account, much like what you've all talked about, but it's really important because designers are still making this mistake, and not, whether you're an entrepreneur or not, they're still making the mistake not understanding the business. They're trying to get their designs and their ideas out there. And even after going to these events and learning from other thought leaders that were being published and made the businesses work and whatnot, none of the business leaders in any of the companies, small, medium, and billion-dollar corporations, knew who anybody was that I was talking about. So I could talk about process, I could talk about best practices, I could talk about outcomes, but it was also fairly new. And it still is for a lot of businesses in terms of how to move forward. You look at even how the pandemic's made e-commerce come forward, and yet it's been around forever, and now everyone's trying to move and pivot and shift. So I think the one thing that I really learned, and where I constantly fucked up, was that I was always trying to position the ideas and how to move forward into a better direction based on the idea that what I was presenting was to an audience of my peers, rather than to an audience of business leaders, rather than to an audience of people in marketing. And so I over time, I learned from that, and I started building workshops that would teach these things in a hands-on way. And I actually took the workshops to, I'm just outside of Ottawa in Canada, and I took them to Montreal, Quebec in Canada. And I had 4 colleagues of mine come in and actually play the role of a chief executive officer, a chief marketing officer, a chief technology officer, and just a potential customer. And so as they built out different ideas for their new product, they would actually role play and ask questions from the position of those business leaders. And then they'd have to iterate based on that to try to satisfy the needs of the business, to put it in a real world scenario. So, by learning from that, I also learned that, when a person's title doesn't mean they're exceptional at their job, right? It doesn't mean that they're outstanding at their job. There are so many people that I've met where I've just gone in and went, oh, you're the senior director of product. All right, where's the roadmap? Where are we going? And let me align everybody and let's get going. And they don't have a clue as to what they're doing, right? They don't understand what product management is. They don't understand it's their job to help solve the problem. And so that is also a lesson I've had to learn the hard way, going from consulting and being an entrepreneur back into the business world over the last couple of days as a full-time employee and leader. I've had to learn what it means to be an employee again, what it means to report to people. And it's hard because I don't intentionally step outside of my lane, but those experiences that I've been very, very lucky to have. Seth, as you talked about the importance of, I took it as the importance of humility, right? Being humble. Werner makes fun of me all the time, or lags on me because he's like, you're way too humble. I'm like, yeah, but there's way too many narcissists out there who think they're awesome at their job and they're bad at it. They're just horrible at it. And it's like Dunning-Kruger, right? It's the idea of the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? It's that idea that in order to be good at something, you have to have exactly those skills to be good at it, which means that if you're absolutely no good at something, you lack exactly the skills it takes to be good at it. So, I think always keeping that open mind, knowing that you're wrong. And that's what I love about user experience at its fundamental core, is going in with the idea that at the end of the day, I'm making assumptions. everyone in the company is making assumptions. I agree. You get it out the door, kind of, as you talked about, you got to get it out. It's never going to be perfect, right? But at some point you have to come back and find out what's good from the perspective of the people that are using it, so that I can test the assumptions, so the opinions are taken off the table and go, okay, well, here's what's true from the perspective of the end user, not my perspective. And I have 20 years experience in the industry, and nobody around the table has that experience. And I even got 60% of the assumptions I made about what we were building were just completely wrong. And that's not a detriment. To me, that's exciting. That's like, wow, I completely fucked that up. Completely fucked that up. How did I not see that? And I'm the expert. Oh my God, right? But again, if you're open to learning and continuing to evolve your ideas, there's really nothing you can't accomplish. It's just, it's removing your ego. And that's I love about this event. I wish more people would share their fuck up stories, because there's this idea of perfection and perception in this day and age. And I've met every thought leader in the design world that has got us to now. And let me tell you, they've all fucked up in huge ways, as has every business leader, because they all shared their stories with me after the recording light went off. Oh, let me tell you, I screwed this up. Let me how you. And it's being human, right? We're not curing cancer, most of us, right? We're just trying to create solutions that people will enjoy and make some money on the side as well. So anyway, that's my fuck up story. Thanks for the time.
Amen. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff. That was
Very
great. And very dense, full of lessons.
Yeah, awesome
Very
story.
well summarized. Very well summarized.
And so agree on a lot of things. Yeah, incredible. It's a lot of it is mindset and being humble and trying to figure out and putting yourself out there as well, and knowing that you might fuck up, which is fine. It's not something bad.
You will fuck up, not might. Might is pretty optimistic, I think.
And it's ironic too, because I've mentored a whole bunch of people over the years, and I just had a young lad who moved from Washington D.C. to Kitchener, Ontario, which is just outside of Toronto. And he has 2 job offers on the table, one that would pay him a lot more money, that would put him in an area he'd never done before, and he was really scared, and another job that would pay him a lot less, but he's familiar with. And he was freaking out about getting it wrong and maybe making me look bad as I recommended him. And I said, so what's the downside? You're going to learn something, maybe not succeed, but be able to add that to your portfolio and move on. So what's the problem? But so many people are scared of failing. And again, not to take the stage, again, more of these events need to happen, because people need to understand. I don't know how all of you learn, but I learn by doing face plants relentlessly.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I tell you.
There's
Anyway,
nothing
cheers,
better
guys.
there's nothing better than watching like I did one yesterday with 6 users using the product that we've designed, and then just seeing them just do the things that you did not design, and you go like, oh God, no, and they do it right. And you think, right, we designed that wrong, right? And I think that's such a great experience. Yeah, fully agree.
Cool. Thanks, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Jeff.
Jeff.
Thank you.
Anyone else up to join the stage? Any more questions? No one.
Yeah,
think
we're
then-
good with the time as well. So
Yeah, we can slowly close. So
yeah.
We have already posted a couple of times the sign up for the next one, which we will do in May. So we'll take a little bit more time this time. But I've as well seen that there was an idea to move that into Clubhouse. Maybe that's something we can explore as well, doing something in between. So stay tuned and follow us on social media, like everyone who is on stage, and as well the people who are in the audience, because we will be sharing the videos and so on going forward. We will put it on our YouTube channels so that you can rewatch the presentation, share it with others who could be joining, and Jan is posting the LinkedIn profiles from us as well. So if you are not following us yet, feel free to contact us as well if you have more questions which you didn't want to ask in the open right now. I guess at least every one of us is happily in sharing answers and connecting after the call going forward as well.
Definitely. And a big thank you from my side to speakers Seth and Werner, and also to the participants. Thank you for being us here, and thank you for these great stories. both from the speakers and the guests. I really spent great time.
Thank you so much.
Any
everybody.
departing words from you guys?
Just
That was
remember-
great. Yeah, sorry, you go, Werner.
No, sure. Seth, you go first. That's the sequence.
Yeah, no, it was great sharing the story. It's always good to talk about the things that you did wrong, because you keep going back to those times and thinking, okay, and what did I learn, and sort of try to go through it again and see if I still learn from the lessons today. And it was good to hear some of your stories and questions. So I love to do it, and would be great to meet all you all again the next Fuck Up Night or somewhere else, maybe on Clubhouse or wherever we can meet up.
Sounds great. And then, like I always said to my teams when I was still employed by the big guns, is that, and I walked around with a cup of coffee in my hand, I said, I know so much because I fucked up so many times. I just want to say thank you very much for having me here. This was awesome. Thank you so much. And I'm keen to be back to see what's going to happen in the next editions of this. Guys, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you too.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, and see you next time again.
Ciao.
Ciao.
See you, ciao.